With the U20 World Cup on the horizon and the fated matchup between Japan and France coming soon, many are wondering exactly how Japan is going to defeat them. I mean, not only do you have the crazy speed and world-class talent of Julian Loki, the unpredictable and contrarian style of Charles Chevalier, but also the unknown potential and power of a new generation 11. Safe to say, Japan has a huge obstacle in front of them to deal with. And with Sai Itoshi refusing to represent Japan until after they have survived the group stage and essentially dodging the fade with Loki, a lot of people suspect that Japan has no chance at winning. Well, I'm not one of those people. I think I have an idea and a theory as to how Japan can defeat France and in turn, Julian Loki, Charles Chevalier, and the unknown new generation 11 all at once. And trust me, this theory is definitely something. Before I get into it though, I want to leave a spoiler warning for the latest chapter of the Blue Lock manga being chapter 308, and if you have not read it, I would suggest you click off this video now if you wish to not be spoiled. And also, join my Discord server, it's called the Neo Egoist Geeks, and the link to it is down below. To begin with, we should start by looking at the France team and what their players are capable of, both in their strengths and their weaknesses. So let's start with their likely ace striker and strongest player, Julian Loki. Loki is undeniably one of the strongest characters we've seen in the series. Thanks to his accurately labeled divine speed, he can easily blitz by people in 1v1 situations, as well as perform long stretted dribbles to cut through team formations. Even against the greatest striker in the world during the PHG game against Bayern München, Noah didn't win a single matchup against Loki. Excluding his speed, his professional talent is not to be underestimated. Against Isagi's better judgment, Loki isn't just someone born with fast legs. He's an insane beast when it comes to the professional scope of the sport, a genius in his own right. But when reviewing all of Loki's moments in the series, there is one thing that obviously sticks out to me that I don't think a lot of people have caught on to. And it's the fact that Loki cannot run forever. Sure, Loki has the ability to shift gears, increasing his acceleration to an even higher degree, but he doesn't have the ability to always be moving at top speed. Looking at his performances in the World 5 match, for instance, Loki seems to use his speed in a burst style, only over accelerating a single time against Ring, who predicted his running course before immediately decelerating after his goal. I mean, this is kinda obvious because why would Loki not slow down? He just scored a goal. But this piece of evidence extends into the PXG game as well. During Loki's debut play, he snatches the ball from Isagi directly off kickoff. However, what we see is that Loki immediately decelerated after stealing the ball as opposed to continuing down the field. Even after using his God Warp Sprint to break past Yoichi and Hiyori, he immediately decelerated when making his pass to Rin. We see Loki also do this against Noah, where he immediately decelerates after catching up to Noah, not constantly moving at his top speed. But an even greater feat to notice is when Loki stops the Kaiser impact. This was an incredible display by Loki, but it actually hints towards his weakness more than the other moments do. Loki had to shift gears and accelerate a total of 3 times in order to catch the Kaiser impact, essentially burning 3 bursts to reach it before it landed in the net. Typically, Loki only uses a single burst to catch up to people like he did against Noah. But at this moment he used 3, which resulted in some drawbacks. After Loki intercepted the Kaiser impact, he didn't move or impact the play until 2 chapters later, almost as if he took a rest after his block because it took a toll on his legs. Sure, you could argue that this was to imply some narrative focus for some other characters, but why can't both reasons be true? Loki's biggest weakness is forcing him to accelerate past his base speed, because doing so anymore causes what is essentially a cooldown to his insane sprinting. So assuming you could force Loki to accelerate with multiple bursts of speed, he's likely going to burn out. This also ties back into my previous point of Loki being unable to run forever. Loki's dribbling requires lots of space, as his strides being so long is what makes him a fast sprinter. So assuming you can close off the openings for Loki to use his speed and dribbling, or just restrict him overall, you can eliminate the use of his speed. Loki isn't like Chigiri or Atoya, who have the ability to make more agile cuts. He's more like a rook in chess, only being able to move in one direction for a set space. And that is exactly how you beat Loki. Either force him to accelerate, causing a drawback to his speed, or contain his speed within a confined space. Now remember that later for this video. But let's move on to Loki's greatest asset in becoming the greatest striker in the world and the contrarian midfielder, Charles Chevalier. Charles' greatest element is not his incredible passing or insane spatial awareness. I would argue that it's his contrarian nature. Charles' mentality lets him dictate the flow of the game in any way he chooses, be it logical or not, and even at his most primal points of the game does he truly desire to do the opposite of what most expect. His incredible skills as a midfielder just make this mentality of his a bigger threat, since he has the ability to actualize his desires into fully fledged plays. In regards to U20 midfielders, I would argue that Charles is actually the second best U20 midfielder, coming close to Sai Itoshi on that ranking. Plays like his Rabona pass or his 1% gap shot are just proof of his incredible talent as a player, which has even led many to question whether or not he is a new generation 11, which, just to clarify, he isn't, by the way. I just want to put that out there. Charles is not a new generation 11. But the thing to understand is that with Charles being so young at 15 years old, his greatest weakness is his lack of experience. Charles simply does as he pleases, and once you can get the scope on his desires and specific game traits that he looks for, you can formulate a plan around him to shut him down. This was shown with Hiyori being able to stop Charles after understanding the context behind his thought process. Once you can, by Hiyori's definition, contradict the contrary to the contrary, you can effectively shut down Charles. But for the final piece in France's lineup is the possible new generation 11. The statement of France having their own new generation 11 at this point is mostly pure speculation thanks to chapter 303 with a double spread of country flags circling the globe, while the title of new generation 11 is also mentioned. So in the future, if when the France team is revealed there is no new generation 11 on their team, you can essentially bypass this section of the video. But based on Loki's dialogue on his desire to become the greatest striker, I'm going to assume that the new generation 11 is not a midfielder. I mean, just going off of size, abilities, and talents, a midfielder of relative quality to him, and someone who can deliver those kinds of passes would essentially eliminate the need that Loki has for Charles. But I also don't think that this new generation 11 could be a forward or a striker kind of character. Loki doesn't seem to mention any kind of current competition within his country. The only closest character to that would be Noah. Plus, it's possible that Charles could assist this other forward over Loki, which would put Loki in an even worse position. So because he's not only confident in Charles' skills, but also needs them, I'm going to assume that this new generation 11 is not a midfielder or a striker, which means they either have to be a defensive player or a goalkeeper. And honestly, a goalkeeper could be very interesting. Kagamaru is currently the only keeper we have with any relevance in the story, so giving France a new Gen 11 goalkeeper would give the France team a stack of characters to challenge the Blue Lockers as a whole. You have Charles and Loki to pressure and evolve the defensive players, and you have a new Generation 11 goalkeeper to pressure and evolve the strikers. It's a nice balance, and I think it does have some potential. As for their abilities, I'm not entirely sure what they could have in their arsenal. Maybe they could be like Kagamaru with explosive reaction time, or be a giant player like Murasaki Bara from Kuroko's Basket, but I'm not entirely sure on that front. What I am sure about though, is how Japan is going to defeat France. It is actually more obvious than you may think. Before I get into that though, I want to remind you guys that if you are enjoying this video so far, to leave me a like and subscribe down below to see more awesome Blue Lock content just like this. It costs you guys absolutely nothing, helps me out immensely, and we're on the road to 20k, so let's try and get there. And if you want to help me even more, if you were to become a member of the channel, you'd earn some awesome benefits like personal video requests and shoutouts and videos, but you'd also get your name mentioned in the Blue Lock New World movie as a contributor to the project. And this also applies to leaving super chats. So like, subscribe, and become a member today to show your support for me and my content. When it comes to the inevitable matchup between Japan and France, I do think Japan will lose at least once. And I know that that kind of takes away the purpose of this video, but just hear me out on this. Unless I'm mistaken, despite them playing in the group stage together, there is the possibility that France faces off against Japan in the knockout stage. Unless they lose to someone like Germany or Spain in the knockout stage, I think Japan losing to France in the group stage kind of makes sense. But as for how Japan would eventually defeat France, whether it be in the group stage or the knockout stage, this is how I think they're going to do that. In order for Japan to defeat Loki, Charles, and a potential new Generation 11, Blue Lock Japan is going to have to set up a double tag team man mark system. I know that sounds weird, but let me explain. This system would have two players dedicated to shutting down a single player in the France formation. Those players obviously being Loki and Charles. To handle Charles, the two people that I would say would mark him would be Karasu and Hiyori. Both of these players have a close relationship with Charles when it either relates to working with him or stopping him. Charles was consistently matched up with Hiyori, and after some failed attempts, Hiyori finally understood the mindset needed to predict the contrarian. And through his formation for PXG, Karasu's main role was to feed the ball to Charles, setting him up for plays based on what he likes the most. Both of these characters have associated with Charles more than anyone else on the Blue Lock Japan team, but they also understand what makes him tick. Not to mention, since both characters have metavision, they are the perfect candidates to handle his man marking. In my mind, Karasu and Hiyori would be used to pressure Charles to either prevent passes from reaching Loki, completely shut down Charles, or forcing Charles' passes to go off course, making Loki run more. And going back to Loki, who exactly is going to man mark him? Well, that's a fairly obvious pick. Chigiri and Zantetsu. These two are undeniably the fastest on the Blue Lock team and are reasonably the only players who could consistently stop him. Sure, you could argue players like Corona or Kunigami could be used to man-mark him, but I don't necessarily agree with that. Corona definitely has the speed, but he lacks the general stamina to keep up with Isagi using Metavision, and has consistently been burnt out of stamina or cranked up easily when maintaining his top speed for large amounts of time. Kunigami on the other hand has the stamina, but he lacks the general speed to keep up with Loki. And as we see with Noah, strength is not enough to stop him. Even if Kunigami attempted to use his strength to restrict Loki, I'm not even sure he'd get the chance to even reach Loki before he blitzed by him. So Chigiri and Zantetsu seem to be the only possibilities. We've seen in the episode Nagi's spin-off manga how powerful this double speedster chemical reaction can be. Sure, Karasu did note that their all-out sprint method could only be used a few times, but that was prior to their NAO training. Hell, that was back in the second selection. With all their stamina and physical endurance increases, they could likely perform this chemical reaction much easier. And even discarding that, how many all-out sprints do you think Loki could do before he gets burnt out? He'd realistically have to use a burst to break past Chigiri and Zantetsu, meaning his legs would be on a cooldown again, assuming you could force a second one. When it comes to Chigiri and Zantetsu, they either need to make sure Loki doesn't get the ball, or force him to run extra to burn his legs out. That's honestly the most realistic strategy that I can think of to stop Loki. As for the potential new generation 11 goalkeeper, this is honestly a really easy situation to deal with. I would leave him to Shido and Ryo. With Ryo's copying ability and being known as the master copy, he could act as a midfielder that could be a duplicate of anyone that is needed for the current situation. Meaning aside from assisting and playmaking, he could also score goals for himself. An example of a technique he could copy is the two-gun volley. But when it comes to a new generation 11 goalkeeper, I honestly think that Shido may be one of the best options. To me, I kinda correlate Shido to Kaiser in a way. While Kaiser's Kaiser Impact gets an insane boost to its lethality due to his fast swing speed which throws off a keeper's timing, Shido can essentially do the same thing. However, he substitutes the swing speed for unpredictable positioning. The majority of Shido's goals are taken from a crazy stance or position, which is what makes his shots so insane and hard to predict. Having Ryo copy players like Hiyori or even Sai, and then give Shido passes that let him play in crazy ways, may be one of the more deadly options on the pitch. Couple that with Rin and Isagi for other attacking players, and I think this is the most sound strategy. But now I'm sure you're probably thinking, what about the other attacking players for France? Because yeah, obviously Loki isn't going to be the only attacking player. I mean, he might be, but who knows. In that case, I would honestly trust the defending to Aiku and Aryu. Both characters have naturally large ranges for their defensive ability, are strong in close quarters combat, and can handle aerial dominance over plays. I think for them as my central defenders, shutting down any attacking plays that don't involve Loki are going to be a cinch. But let me explain the final formation. I would have Gagamaru in the net as my goalkeeper, with Aryu and Aiku as my center backs. I would have Chigiri and Zantetsu as my fullbacks on either side respectively. I would have Karasu and Hiyori as defensive midfielders, with Ryo as an offensive midfielder. And on offense, we'd have Isagi and Rin on the wings, with Shido in the dead center. With this formation and with this strategy, I think Blue Lock definitely has a chance at defeating France. But that was simply my prediction and idea as to how Japan could create a strategy to defeat France. Despite Loki's title of Godspeed, he is an omnipotent, and I think Japan definitely stands a chance at defeating him. But aside from that, I hope you guys did enjoy this video, and will continue to enjoy it in the future. I just want to say thank you so much to all the members on my channel who help support me and my content. And if you wish to earn some awesome benefits like they do, and even get your name mentioned in the Blue Lock New World movie, become a member yourself, and help support me moving forward. And just a final reminder to join my Discord server if you're ever interested in getting any more involved with our amazing community. As for the question of the video though, how do you think Japan will defeat France? Leave me your thoughts down below in the comment section. And like always, thank you all for watching, like and subscribe to see more awesome Blue Lock content just like this.